Okay. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. We're excited to talk about combating the Great Resignation and how to move towards the Great Retention. I'm excited to introduce our speakers today. We have Sofia Roman and Anica Solis. Sofia is the founder of Raise Up Marketing, so interested to hear her perspective on the Great Resignation and what she's seen working and the Great Retention. And then Anica Solis giving us kind of the human resources perspective. So I'll hand it over to you, Sofia, to talk about what you're seeing happening today.
Great, thank you, Sarah. So for today's presentation, we really want to focus on, we realize there is this Great Resignation, and how do we move beyond that? So we do have some information in terms of, who is driving this, what is happening today, but more importantly, how can we rethink the Great Resignation into more actionable steps that we can take as organizations or as team leaders to move beyond that and really focus on how do we retain the talent that we have, and what do we do with that so that we can combat the Great Resignation. So the first step that we have here really is, around what is driving the Great Resignation. There are several internal, external forces that are driving this. Some of it really is about individual employees and how they're feeling about their role, how happy they are, or what may be missing as they evaluate their role, what may be missing there for them. So that's one of the key indicators. I think now people are beginning to focus more in terms of, where do I want this role for me to go moving forward? Wages are also, another issue in terms of, we've heard a lot of talk recently around inflation and what is that doing? How is that impacting employees in the workforce? So that's another piece that we should also be that we know is driving this. And then there's also, a sense now, because I think what's happened is with the pandemic, people have had a lot of time to reflect, right? So they're really reflecting on wages. They're looking at their roles and figuring out what does this mean from a life-work balance? What is that wellness component for workers today? In addition to, some of the company cultures and their roles, and what is it driving? I think it's just folks having time to think about, is this really working for me as an employee? So that's really what is, I think, driving a lot of decisions in terms of employees deciding whether, their role is really ideal for them from a long-term perspective. So those are some forces, but now it's about how do we go from, how do we make that transition? What do we need to look at in terms of moving forward to more of a retention-focused mindset for everyone, whether it's employees and employees reflecting on what they see they need, and for employers in really evaluating what their teams are looking for from an employment perspective.
So now that we know what is driving the Great Resignation, we want to explore some ways some companies can retain, maybe even recruit some employees. So because everybody's had time to reflect on what they're looking for out of work, a lot of companies are starting to become more flexible with the work schedules. I've heard of some companies are offering still remote work, but also coming back into office. So giving that balance, also offering maybe just coming in one day a week so they can touch bases with everybody there. Here at EMA, what we've recognized are working moms. So some of our moms, we have them take a later start time in the morning so they're able to do school drop off. And sometimes even in the middle of the day, the same moms are taking an extended break for school pickups. So that is some of the ways we've helped to do for a flexible work schedule. It's also important for the companies to recognize the talent that they have in-house. So developing what they have. So allowing your employees to shadow others in different departments is a great way to acknowledge someone's skill, maybe as a trainer that they didn't realize that they had in-house. And also it gives an opportunity to introduce the employee who's being trained in somewhere else, you know, a possible career change within the company. So just acknowledging what you have in-house is a great way to retain the talent that you have. Thoughtful employee rewards and incentives is always a nice perk to give your employees. It's here at EMA, we really root for each other's success. And so we've started using the Bonusly app. And that is a great way to acknowledge like a job well done that Sofia has done, and that I'll acknowledge her, but it recognizes it across the company so everybody else can see what a rock star she is. Mental health is definitely something at the top, I believe, of everybody's agenda when it comes. You know, we've all been taking our mental health days. We've just disguised it a little differently. You know, we'll say we're feeling sick, or we have a family emergency, so we're not able to come into work. So as a company, why not try to cut down on those sporadic days being taken off and just give it to everyone? It doesn't have to be an entire day. It can be half days, maybe a late start. So allowing your employees to sleep in and come in at noon because you had a late work day the prior day, or leave a half a day early on Friday so they can have a little extended weekend. Even an extended lunch break is, you know, a nice little perk to give employees so they know that they're appreciated and that they can concentrate on themselves.
I find the flexible work arrangement being so critical today. You know, during the pandemic, organizations, employees, and employers, you know, realize that, yeah, we can do work remotely. And because of a lot of the external factors, you know, especially for working moms, that this is really, you know, a huge opportunity for employers to recruit new talent. Because we know right now, you know, people are resigning, right? So how are we backfilling some of these roles? And, you know, folks that are leaving are looking for flexibility. So that is, you know, important, not just to keep your employees that you have now, but to also recruit. You know, I know a lot of, you know, marketing colleagues that are only looking for remote opportunities. Like they don't ever want to go into the office again. So how do we address that? You know, so that is something to consider. And then another point that you made was around career development and internal mobility, which I think is a huge piece in making sure that employees are really happy with their roles, and how are we looking at developing their roles from a long-term perspective. You know, what skill sets can we as employers provide employees so that they're developing and they're able to make those lateral career changes potentially, or promotions within the organization. So we're not always looking externally to find talent to fill specific roles.
We have a question that kind of relates to this a little bit, but the question being, just in your experience, are you seeing a certain group of folks who are more likely to resign from a position than others? Is there like a group that we're seeing a bigger impact?
Yeah.
You know, oh, go ahead, Sofia.
No, I was just going to say, in general terms, I think that it is across the board, where everyone at, you know, all different career levels, different industries, I think everyone is really being hit by this, and the job numbers are showing that, you know, and it's really difficult for organizations right now to backfill these roles. But there is an emphasis on the mid-level, you know, that there are folks that are in their mid-career that we are seeing, you know, really high resignation numbers, stats for them, for folks in that area. And then the last point here, which was, I'm going to go back to this just really quickly. You don't have to go back on the slide, but around mental health, right? And this is something that I'm just thrilled that is something that employers and people in general and society is paying more attention to, because, you know, at the end of the day, we're all human. And, you know, so let's treat everyone as a human as opposed to like a little working robot. So I'm thrilled to see that the people are being more mindful about that, and that they're building in programs and allowing employees the grace to deal with any mental health, time that they might need.
So companies, you know, you really need to leverage your company culture. So it's one thing to have your company culture written down and talked about amongst each other, but unless you really implement it and live it and breathe it, you're not going to be able to promote that life-work balance. So it's really important to take the time to listen to your employees. So listen to them with, you know, whatever it may be, how their day's going, how the job's going, you know, checking in on them and seeing their bandwidth and seeing if you as a manager can be in any assistance to them. For here at EMA, we've made it a priority to check in with all of our employees once a month. We have these one-on-ones with them and just checking in on them to see how they're feeling and how it's going, and listening to them and what they need. Is there something we need to get them? Any kind of more training? So we're really taking the time to listen to them and, you know, develop their career and help them grow. We want all of our employees here to be empowered to make the decisions, so they don't always have to go to us. It's really trying to build that sense of trust. So it's really taking the time and living the company culture. Like if you're going to talk about mental health, is really, you know, demonstrating it, you know, implementing something within your company so you really live it and breathe it and show that it is important to you as a company, as opposed to just having it written down.
I think that's such a great point. You know, it's almost like leaders need to really lead by example, right?
Exactly.
This is not just about having a set of rules in terms of like what we'd like our company culture to be, but it's really, you know, there should be action associated with all of that. And, you know, all leaders should be leading by example here.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we'll jump into the Q&A section. We have a good set of questions. One question is, how have you seen the Great Resignation impact companies most from an agency perspective?
So I know like here at EMA, we've seen some of the companies where we've jumped in and helped them with the marketing, because some of their marketing, you know, have, you know, decided to change direction in their job. So we've been able to jump in and help them out and help out with their marketing needs, be it, you know, the full scale marketing or maybe on a smaller scale. So, you know, just like Sofia had said earlier, it's, you know, across the board, people have been resigning. So it's nice, you know, for a small company like us to be able to jump in and help people out.
And from an employee perspective, I'm going to offer of that perspective, but as a potential employee, this really does, you know, provide, you know, marketers that are not looking for a full-time role. You know, they may need that flexibility. They might be moms that are shuffling and balancing a lot of, you know, things throughout their day. You know, this model kind of gives that opportunity for employees to have more flexibility and still do that rewarding work that they like to do.
I think it feeds well into the next question, which is, with the gig economy taking place, this will sharpen skills for employees, but do you think the gig economy is going to stick around? Will it grow? Essentially predictions on, on the gig economy and the Great Resignation.
I love the gig economy. I think it gives folks opportunities to grow and learn. And I think that people have seen the benefit of the gig economy, not just financially, but, in growing their skill set, and having that working flexibility that is so important, for families, as they, try to sustain their family and still earn a living. So I'm a big fan of the gig economy.
From an employee standpoint, definitely the gig economy I think it's going to stick around because the employees are what's going to drive going forward. And so the gig economy gives them the opportunity to learn many skills that they may not have been able to in the past. And so I think it's going to stick around for sure.
Next question is, what are some ways to revamp your company culture if it's not currently working?
You have to really sit down and think about what's going to be important and look at your employees, because it really depends upon the company and what you're willing to offer. But, doing some small little things up front is a great way to revamp it. Recognizing any rewarding kind of programs, like the Bonusly app is a great little way to recognize a job well done. Doing some half work days or even an extended lunch for your employees, or even getting it catered in, is a great way to try to shift to a more positive company culture. So just starting little, and then you'll be able to build upon that and get down back to your core of what you want your culture to be.
I also think to add to that, because I think those are some great potential rewards, and really understanding your employees and what they're looking for. Part of that is kind of, doing kind of an employee survey to get that benchmark data, right? So that you have a sense of understanding in terms of, where are your employees right now? Are they happy? What are some of the pain points that your employees are experiencing? And that way, that data will not only serve as benchmark data, so you can, follow and see what metrics look like once you start implementing changes, but it will inform what potential programs you may want to introduce, and will help you in the future to determine, what's working, what's not working, where have I moved the needle with some of these programs. So I think it's, stepping back and taking a holistic view in terms of, what do we have? What do we want to offer? But most importantly, get feedback from employees.
I think it's so important, just the different ways that people receive appreciation, like what makes somebody feel appreciated, how leadership may view expressing appreciation may not be the way that those involved really care to receive it. So a great point. And then final question, besides pay, what is something people are looking for in a new role?
The flexible schedule, that's definitely a top priority going on, just not only for working moms, it can also be for working dads who want to be there in the afternoon to do soccer practice. So having that flexible schedule for the workforce is a top priority, I believe, for people.
I agree with that. I would add two things in there. I think that employees are also looking for appreciation. In terms of, acknowledging their work, acknowledging the impact that they're making to an organization, I think is critical in terms of, that feedback loop. Everyone who feels appreciated just wants to do more. And that's just kind of human nature. So that would be one thing. The second thing is, I think employees they want to learn, and they want to figure out, if I'm in this role and I really like this role, how can I take my career to the next level? So it's a lot of working closely with, managers and employees, working closely to define, what that individual career path looks like for individual employees. I think that is, really important in retaining key talent in your organization is having those meaningful conversations, but also having an action plan. I've always loved, one of the things that I've always done is said, okay, so here's your role today. Tell me, what do you want to add to your resume? what can we add to your resume? You know, if we're a small team, we can figure out how do we add that skill set so that you can see the progression in your own growth from an employee perspective. So I think that those, you know, two pieces in addition to flexibility are all super important right now.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much to everyone who joined us today. And thank you for the questions. It was a great conversation. Really appreciate your time, both Sofia and Anica, and your perspective. If anybody has any comments or questions, please feel free to reach out. contact@expertmarketingadvisors.com is a great email address to send to. And we'll be sending out the replay at the conclusion of the event. So thanks so much and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.